definitely not. That's weasel words.
Yeah, can I just come
access,
in?
can I say,
Sorry,
access doesn't mean he wasn't in control or acting as a shadow director, right? So Peter Murrell may not have had access to the Yes Scotland Limited account, if that's what he's referring to. Accounts, what does he mean by accounts? But the bank account was separate, I understand. So both organisations had a bank account. The only signature and who was in charge of the Yes Scotland bank account is Scott Martin, and I can prove that because he gave witness testimony in 2021 to a select committee in the House of Commons, and he details that he was in full control and he was the only one with access to it. They had a credit card and an online backing app. That's his own words to the select committee. You can find it online if you type in his name, because I did.
And who was his boss? His boss was Peter Murrell. So therefore, as Ian Dunnett said at the weekend to the Sunday Mail, he says Peter Murrell had very close control over all the donations that were coming into Yes Scotland. He says he had very close control of the weird donations of 3.5 million. So if the marketing director of Yes Scotland says that Peter Murrell controlled everything, and don't forget, Scott Martin works for Peter Murrell.
It leaves unanswered questions.
It leaves a lot of unanswered questions about Peter Murrell. Where did all this £4.2 million go? Because now 3.5 million plus the money that was bailed out leads to a deficit of
the most worrying,
unaccounted money. It leaves the unaccounted £4.2 million unaccounted for. So the police have to investigate this.
But the most worrying thing about this is to find out that £825,000 of SNP's money was transferred from the SNP account to Yes Scotland Limited to help zero the balance. So that in itself engages Peter Murrell, making that decision to transfer the money. It engages Scott Martin, who was the sole signature of the account, to receive the money. So the two organisations are linked and the two people work together. So that's why the police have to open the investigation and get to the bottom of what actually has happened.
And then the other thing is, in February 2014, Peter Murrell decided that 4 of the 5 directors had to be fired. And Scott Martin implemented that. He fired them. And it was Murrell that made the decision. So the bottom line is, if Murrell could do that, he could certainly have a big influence over what the money was spent on. He had his hands at the till, and basically what happened. So that 4.2 million.
Well, we've just handed in some detailed evidence to Police Scotland for what is still many unanswered questions, and more than happy to take questions from yourselves. We've handed a list of email exchanges, Yes Scotland Limited's public accounts, including the abbreviated accounts, and it still raises more questions than it answers. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
David, can you just crystallise?
Can I just come in just very briefly there? I just wanted to parrot what the police said. The police said something very important when we were in doing the 2-hour interview. The Detective Inspector Gary Dalgleish said there are a lot of unanswered questions and that they're going to try and get to the bottom of it. That's what he said to us. And they're going to take 2 to 4 weeks to assess the evidence before they come and say whether criminality has occurred or not.
Okay, can you just crystallise for us, what is the allegation you're making? What are your concerns here?
Well, my concerns are, obviously, I was one of the first complainants of the missing ring-fenced funds when I realised the accounts clearly showed that money was missing. As we now know, 5 years later, those concerns were correct. The money is missing because it's now been admitted it was all spent somewhere else. So my concern here is obviously I was aware of Peter Murrell pleading guilty to £400,000 of embezzlement of SNP money, all during this period. I thought that was too simple and too easy and too quick, and obviously without a full trial there was no opportunity for cross-examination, so that we won't know what might have been discovered. And then what really raised my concerns was the SNP leadership, that they're still doing, claiming that there's no need whatsoever for any investigation. Now, any decent organisation that's honest, that's been the victim, as they claim they are, the victim of £400,000 of embezzlement, would immediately want to call in forensic accountants and go through all their accounts to ensure that there's no other money that's missing.
In terms of your specific concerns about Yes Scotland, Blair Jenkins, the chief executive, has said that you've simply misunderstood the accounts and this was just running costs. What do you say to that?
I've seen the comments that have come out today. Here's the other problem for that claim. It was claimed at the weekend by a spokesperson for Yes Scotland Limited, so that's one of two people, that the Weirs donated £3.5 million to Yes Scotland and absolutely did not have anything to do with the SNP. They were very clear on this. Then in 2015, thanks to Tom Gordon's great work, it's recorded that they had to bail out, the SNP had to bail out Yes Scotland in 2015 and transfer £825,000. So that now means that we're talking over 4.2 million that's in play here. None of this is detailed in there. And the other issue that I would pull with this is the Electoral Commission put a spending limit on both the main campaign groups, and it was 1.34 million. So it would appear that they're claiming they spent a lot more money than they were allowed to. So the bottom line is it doesn't add up. Accountants have told me that it doesn't add up. And it's now in the hands of the police to do a full investigation, which I'm sure they will. And only once they've had access to both sets of bank accounts will people know what actually took place. But straight away, because £825,000 was transferred from the SNP to Yes Scotland in 2015, that had to be authorised by Peter Murrell. Peter Murrell is a convict and has been found guilty of embezzlement. So just from that, it needs to be looked at very seriously.
Just lastly for me, why is it so important for you to keep this going? Peter Murrell has been convicted, he's in jail. Why is that not the end of it?
Because I don't believe he could have done what he's done without other people either helping him or turning a blind eye to it. The SNP should have had proper audit processes. People resigned because they were blocked repeatedly. This brings in Nicola Sturgeon, who's on record, telling them to stop asking questions about the funding. We were all told repeatedly, complainants, that we were wrong. There was no missing money. The money was still in the SNP's accounts. We now know, as John Swinney's now told us all, that that's not true. The money is all gone. So I believe that there is something else going on here. These numbers don't add up. I didn't rush to the media with this. I went to an accountant, first of all, for advice to ask them if this was what I thought it was, because none of this adds up. And it now doesn't, it adds up even less now than it did last week, because they've now confirmed 33.5 million from the Weirs, and then there's the bailout of 825,000, and you're only allowed to spend 1.3 million. They sound like big numbers, but it sounds like it just doesn't add up. So hence it's now with the police. I'll help them in any way I can, and my feeling is there's more, and that's the problem. This blanket, we don't need an investigation. It's absolutely the wrong thing. We need an investigation. We need all the accounts opened up. We need to bring in forensic accountants.
Dave, you're talking about something different now, though. You're talking about an investigation not just into the SNP, but into Yes Scotland. What do you think happened to that £3 million from the Weirs?
It's only speculation, and because that's all we can do, because there's no record of it. And it seems very odd. It's also, once again, we seem to see the same pattern that happened in the SNP. Denial that there's anything wrong. They're claiming it's all spent. There was a witness come forward at the weekend who worked at Yes Scotland that said they were struggling for money and that other people were controlling all the funds. Well, if that's the case, then this raises the potential issue of shadow directors, which in itself is a criminal offence. It's also a criminal offence for a director of a company to take instructions from a shadow director if it's going to damage the business. The numbers don't add up. I did an interview with the BBC a week ago. They sent it to accountants, and I asked afterwards, what did your accountant say of it? A lot of unanswered questions. Yeah, we keep getting this, a lot of unanswered questions. So it's only when somebody investigates and gets the bank statements from both organisations and sees the transfer of £825,000, well, that means Peter Murrell transferred SNP funds to an organisation they claim had nothing to do with each other, when clearly there's financial transactions straight away. They clearly did have something to do with each other.
Can I just come in? I just want to say that essentially what our suspicions are is that there is more than one person involved here, that a potential criminal cabal inside the SNP have been operating for a number of years, and essentially they've actually hoodwinked the genuine followers of Scottish independence and have pulled the wool over their eyes, being greedy and avaricious and just grabbing all the money. The fact of the matter is that with 3.5 million being admitted on Sunday by Paul Martin, Scott Martin. Scott Martin said on Sunday he's the spokesman that actually said that 3.5 million was donated entirely by the Weirs to the Yes Scotland. The fact of the matter is that 3.5 million, where is it? And then a deficit, as he's already said, a deficit of 825,000 that had to be bailed out in 3 tranches. That's over £4 million unaccounted for. And Peter Murrell had a very close control over all of Scotland's activities because Ian Dummett, the marketing director, the weekend said that. So, and he's been convicted of fraud and embezzlement. So you've got to ask the question, what happened to the rest of the money? Did Mr Murrell have his grubby hands over that money as well, and has that money gone missing too? This is why we need this full investigation by the police Scotland. And I do say that Swinney and the others that were involved are very much were either involved in the sense that they covered it up. All we've got to do is look back to the 21st of March 2021 when Nicola Sturgeon said, oh, you mustn't question these accounts, you mustn't ask the media to look at it. The fact of the matter was we've had Caroline McAllister, we've had Roger Mullen, we've had Alison Graham,
Cynthia
Guthrie, and all of these people have come out and said they wanted to look, and Douglas Chapman, who was elected as chairman, they were all blocked. That in anybody's language, that's a perversion of the course of justice. There's a massive cover-up going on here, and we are challenging it. And we're going to challenge it because there's a lot more going on here than has been alluded to. The establishment have tried to close it down through Peter Murrell. There's a lot more to come out. And the bottom line is some of it we are looking into, and there's even more than we're telling you today, but we have to verify that as fact.
First of all, we can only stick to the facts that we know, that are in public records, etc. It's now up to the police to take that evidence and test it themselves. And if we're correct, there will be an announcement by the police, and after that we'll have to be very careful what we say, because it could well be a live criminal investigation. But I have no doubt that there's no way Peter Murrell could have done what he's done without other people either turning a blind eye or actually being involved in it.
So one of the key people who was involved in all of this before the referendum, setting up Yes Scotland, was Alex Salmond, yet you haven't mentioned him.
His name doesn't appear in any of the documents. He wasn't a director of Yes Scotland, so all I can go is in the person that set up Yes Scotland Limited was a man called Scott Martin. He set it up, registered at his own flat, his own Edinburgh address. That's where it was set up. That's part of public records. He sold that flat, by the way, last year for £250,000, because I did a bit of research on all sorts of things. That doesn't mean anything, incidentally, but the fact is that's where that was originally registered. It's in the original paperwork. So Alex Salmond's name doesn't appear anywhere. He was certainly a figurehead, without a doubt, and of course there wouldn't have been a Yes Scotland or an independence referendum if he hadn't been campaigning for it. But I've found nothing that implicates him in any way, although there's certainly plenty about Nicola Sturgeon and her leadership, because all of this happened while she was the leader of the party. In 2015, the £825,000 was transferred. She was the leader of the party when that happened. Alex Salmond wasn't. So I'm not here to defend Alex Salmond. He's not here anymore. But there's certainly questions to be answered. And of course, Alex Salmond wasn't married to Peter Murrell.
Can I just point out one other thing? The other thing, when the referendum campaign was running between 2012 and 2014, the person that was placed in charge of the referendum campaign was actually Nicola Sturgeon. It was Alex that placed her in charge, so she was the one that was in control of the whole thing in terms of the overall campaigning. She was the one as deputy leader who was put in charge of that referendum campaign. So I think Nicola Sturgeon has a lot more questions to answer.
David, what do you make of the argument that you've had a long-standing grudge against the SNP?
I haven't.
This is sour grapes, and you're just trying to throw mud.
Definitely not. I was in the SNP for 7 years as a secretary of a branch. I helped build that branch up. I helped raise lots of money I was for 5 years an organiser. It was a very hard decision to leave the SNP, but I realised things were really wrong. I uncovered the fact that was missing money. And so I do not have a grudge of the SNP. In fact, I've been asked by a couple of people, would I consider rejoining? And my answer was, only when the crooks that are running it have gone.
Did you ever try to be an SNP candidate?
Yes, I did in 2019.
What happened to that?
I failed vetting. I didn't have enough experience campaigning.
Who turned you down?
Could you guess?
I'm asking you.
Scott Martin. He was the one that gave me the bad news. He was in charge of the committee.
David, can I ask, have you seen the full accounts of Yes Scotland or just the
No,
abbreviated
there is no
ones?
full accounts.
There are no full accounts.
There are no full
There are no
accounts.
full accounts. It's now been over 10 years. I doubt they exist anymore. The numbers that are published clearly don't add up at all, and there was a massive correction in 2015. So that again raises alarm bells. How can you make such a huge mistake, go from £75,000 in the black to minus 600,000, which is what happened?
Why didn't you raise this at the time?
I don't think I was aware of it at the time in 2015, you know.
Neither was
I've been
I.
asked this before, actually, how come it took me 10 years to notice? I'd say, how come it's taken everybody else even longer to notice? You know, I only started looking and it took me 4 minutes from downloading the documents to reading through them to spot this little update. And it is a tiny little update. It's not glaringly obvious initially. And I read that and I thought, what does this mean? 2.4 million? And I looked through all the other years' accounts to see there must be a reference of this somewhere. No, there's not. And I thought, that's weird. So, and that's when I thought I knew what I'd found. And then I went and found an accountant tax inspector and I said, listen, I need to speak to you about something. I need to send this to you. Could you please tell me, is what I'm seeing that they actually had 2.4 million and yet there's no sign of this anywhere. And then they're being bailed out a year later. They've got a massive minus. And it took a while for them to come back and they said, none of the numbers add up. I thought, yeah, that's what I thought. I thought, oh my God, there's a massive hole here. And now the hole's even bigger. Thanks to the weekend, they've admitted they got 3.5 million from the weirs. Where's that in their accounts? And then a bailout of 825,000. So that's 4.2 million in play. Should be there somewhere.
That money's all unaccounted for. Where is it all gone? I mean, the bottom line is that, you know, you're saying, why did we not notice before? Well, you and the guys in the media could have noticed it. We were just ordinary punters, and we just happened to discover it through David.
And someone who's retired from journalism, I had dinner with him not that long ago to tell him what I'd found. And I'd said, how come it's me that finds this? And he says, because you've got a questioning mind and you spot detail. So that combination is why you spotted it. He says, nobody reads these documents. They go into public records. No one reads them. Well, that seems to be the case. Nobody reads them.
David, can I
Until
just
now.
ask you, just saying you
Sure.
don't think those full accounts exist. The statement we got this morning says that Yes Scotland has voluntarily handed in its full accounts to police.
Yeah,
Scotland.
good. Well,
Who-
it wasn't. Can I just say?
Sorry, can
It
I
wa-
ask who said that?
That was on behalf of Blair Jenkins.
Yeah, no, I saw
Right.
that. I saw that there. That they voluntarily done that. Well, they were asked for that about 2 weeks ago, I think, before the first Sunday Mail story broke. So they were asked for that, and they had that opportunity then, and they didn't. They said it's all been accounted for. And clearly it hasn't. So I'd be most interested if they want to send them to me. I'll have a read of them, see if I can spot anything. But the only way you'll know if this is a true, accurate figure is if both sets of bank accounts are then looked at. And the only people that can do that is the police in an investigation. They can look at both sets of a bank account and see if they match and is there any transfers between them. And it's this man here that did it, Tom Gordon. I found his information. I didn't know about it until the weekend. And that £825,000 clearly links somebody at the SNP, can only be Peter Murrell, transferring £825,000 of SNP money into the account of Yes Scotland Limited.
Which gives the lie to the fact that,
That they're
saying that
completely
the two were totally separate and divided. The fact of the matter is that there are major questions to be answered here, and we believe that the criminality has been committed, but we have to wait for the police to come out and say so in 2 to 4 weeks' time.
And just to quell what was a rather strange development last week, when everyone, the journalists were all watching the accounts all started to disappear from Companies House for Yes Scotland Limited, which was a bit concerning. I believe it was a technical glitch, and I think they're now back, but I haven't checked if they're all back yet. But luckily, I had already downloaded them all and printed them all out, so it didn't bother me if they deleted. But it has created a bit of a stir. But anyway, I believe it was a technical glitch at Companies House that caused that.
Can we get a bit more information about the police, your kind of interaction with the police just there? I think you said it was a 2-hour-long conversation.
It was booked for 2 hours. It was just over an hour and a bit, about an hour and a half. We deliberately made it that this would be later because we weren't sure when it would end. I originally went into the police on the 2nd of July, which I came here first, only to be told they don't have a public desk here any, so could I go to one of the police stations? So I ended up going to Gayfield Square police station. I had already the documents to hand in, but they just gave me a slip and took details of it, and they'd actually organised an interview a week ago, and then that got cancelled and said, could we please meet these more senior detectives that are involved in finance crime. So that's what we've done.
And what did they say to you?
It'll take about 2 to 4 weeks. It'll be sent to their team to evaluate it, to see if they can see. There's already something that I think needs serious investigation, but that's up to them. And if they need any more, they'll be in touch, but it'll be 2 to 4 weeks before there's any sort of decision on whether they're reopening a case or a full investigation. At the moment, it's just inquiries.
What I can also say is that the detective inspector and the detective sergeant are from the economic crimes unit at Gartcosh. It was the same unit that did branch form. And we also said today in there that we would like to see branch form reopened in the sense that £667,000 has gone missing. And as we know, there's a civil claim going in, by groups of donors who lost their money. And essentially the SNP, after years of refusing refunds, made an announcement at the end of last week. Oh, if you wish to get a refund,
can I
get a refund? So because they know they're going to lose a lot of money. I mean, this civil claim could bankrupt the SNP, and it's all their own fault.
Yeah, but can I say, for them to now start offering refunds 5 years and years of denying that any money was missing, I would simply say, whose money are they using to refund, since it's quite clear they've spent all their original donations? This becomes a Ponzi scheme, which is of course in itself illegal.
That's right.
So whose money are they using? Sorry.
Just let it go.
Obviously we've been using the figure of the missing 1.5 million. It sounds from what you're saying that you're actually thinking much more than that.
It could be. The problem is the 1.5 million is what jumps out at you from their abbreviated accounts. It just doesn't add up. There's no explanation for it. And then there's a big change as well. Now they're saying that they actually had 3.5 million just from the weirs. And that means they must have got donations from somewhere else. And then there's the £825,000 bailout in 2015 from the SNP to Yes Scotland Limited to make their account zero. And after that, all their accounts are zero balance, no money, no assets. So we're talking about a figure much bigger than 1.5 million total. What they spent on, who knows?
They're saying that 1.5 million was just the running costs. Could it be that that's right and you've just got it?
There's every opportunity that with the lack of facts and lack of clarity that some things could be wrong. I'm not wrong to raise the issue that this is unexplained. It is unexplained, and multiple accountants have already said it's unexplained. So I can't be wrong on that because it's a fact. It is unexplained. It would be helpful if they published all their bank statements and all their accounts and all their invoices and all their paperwork if they still have it.
And
that's been 10 years. So you're only required for 7 years to keep your records. So I doubt they've actually even got the records. So.
Aamer Anwar said that he released a statement saying Peter Murrell had no access to Yes Scotland. Are you not reassured?
Well, definitely not. That's weasel words.
Yeah, can I
say access doesn't mean he wasn't in control or acting as a shadow director, right? So Peter Murrell may not have had access to the Yes Scotland Limited account, if that's what he's referring to. Accounts, what does he mean by accounts? But their bank account was separate, I understand. So both organisations had a bank account. The only signature and who was in charge of the Yes Scotland bank account is Scott Martin, And I can prove that because he gave witness testimony in 2021 to a select committee in the House of Commons, and he details that he was in full control and he was the only one with access to it. They had a credit card and an online backing up. That's his own words to the select committee. You can find it online if you type in his name, because I did.
And who was his boss? His boss was Peter Murrell. So therefore, as Ian Dunnett said at the weekend to the Sunday Mail, he says Peter Murrell had very close control over all the donations that were coming into Yes Scotland. He says he had very close control of the weird donations of 3.5 million. So if the marketing director of Yes Scotland says that Peter Murrell controlled everything, and don't forget, Scott Martin works for Peter Murrell.
It leaves unanswered questions.
It leaves a lot of unanswered questions about Peter Murrell. Where did all this £4.2 million go? Because now 3.5 million plus the money that was bailed out leads to a deficit of
the most worrying,
unaccounted money. It leaves the unaccounted £4.2 million unaccounted for. So the police have to investigate this.
But the most worrying thing about this is to find out that £825,000 of SNP's money was transferred from the SNP account to Yes Scotland Limited to help zero the balance. So that in itself engages Peter Murrell, making that decision to transfer the money. It engages Scott Martin, who was the sole signature of the account, to receive the money. So the two organisations are linked and the two people work together. So that's why the police have to open the investigation and get to the bottom of what actually has happened.
And then the other thing is, in February 2014, Peter Murrell decided that 4 of the 5 directors had to be fired. And Scott Martin implemented that. He fired them. And it was Murrell that made the decision. So the bottom line is, if Murrell could do that, he could certainly have a big influence over what the money was spent on. He had his hands at the till, and basically what happened. So that 4.2 million. I think the police will probably want to go to.
Well, let's not speculate what the police want to do.
I think they'll go to HMP Dumfries, and they'll be re-interviewing Mr Murrell, and they'll certainly, I think they'll also be. I also think they'll be interviewing Scott Martin.
Is there actually a police investigation, or is it simply assessing the information?
This is an inquiry at the moment to assess the evidence.
Over the next
and
2 to 4 weeks,
I understand they'll need before they'll be able to come back with anything. And I'm told if they're going any further, I'll have to come back and make a detailed witness statement and sign documents.
But the final comments of the detective inspector Dalgleish was there is an awful lot of unanswered questions here.
So would you encourage the SNP to hand over the accounts voluntarily to the police then right now? Because obviously, yes, Scotland did that today.
There needs to be full transparency in everything. Yes.
When I was in the SNP just before I left them, I wrote a transparency resolution, which would have dealt with all of this. This would never have happened, because I believe transparency is extremely important in all organisations. It is the only thing that ensures that you don't get corruption, because everything comes out and everyone can see it.
In branch forms with Peter Murrell stealing money, you're talking about the SNP giving the escort money. So where's the embezzlement?
Well, they're not giving the money, are they? They've transferred the money, while at the same time claiming the two organisations are completely unconnected. Why would they transfer money then?
It's widely reported at the time.
It was. But can I just come in there? The fact is that 3.5 million was donated by the Weirs. It went to Yes Scotland, according to Scott Martin at the weekend. So if I can finish what I'm saying, please. 3.5 million, and there was other donations on top of that from lots of people into Yes Scotland, and then they're bailed out. They go into a massive deficit of plus 800,000. So where did that 4.2 million pounds go? It's unaccounted for. Did it get into people's, did it go into people's back pockets? That's what the police have to investigate.
It also raises the question: are what they're doing is trying to cover up a massive overspend that they weren't allowed to spend? They were only allowed to spend 1.34 million by the Electoral Commission on the main Yes campaign. Well, we can already see from their own numbers, there's 4.2 million in play here. They didn't have that many staff that were being paid.
David, I've just got to respond to your written statement from Yes Scotland. So on the regulated accounts, on the ceiling, they said that some money was spent before it was a regulated period, so they can spend that money. They also said on the Weir donations that was included in the profit and loss account that wasn't on the front-facing account. So what do you make of those two additional facts to what you've said?
Well, first of all, publish the full profit and loss, because that's clearly what's missing in the accounts. Why wouldn't they publish these things if the 3.5 million was included in it? Because this raises the issue that they might not have been allowed to spend, or might not have been allowed to use abbreviated accounts. Over a certain limit, you're not allowed to use abbreviated accounts because there's large sums of money involved. Already they're saying 3.5 million plus another 825,000. We're now past 4.2 million. So publish it all and give it to the police and let them make the decision.
And also publicly
And
publish it for everybody to see.
Just to come back on them, why did they need bailed out at the end? Why was this massive change in the accounts to cover up a mistake? Because there was a big mistake. And then the next year they cover it up and it's now minus 600,000. Then they get 825,000 from the SNP just so they can come down to zero and start doing dormant accounts.
Are you content now that 1.5 million ceilings now that are a red herring?
Depends what they spent it on.
Before the
Depends when they spent it and depends what they spent it on.
What should John Swinney do?
Resign.
Well, before he resigns or departs, should he throw open the books of both the SNP for the period and anything that he has in the way of legacy paperwork from US Scotland?
They should first of all call in forensic accountants, like any decent leader of any organisation that's been the victim of embezzlement. Call in forensic accountants, they'll get all the details, they'll get all the bank statements, and they'll go through line by line and find out what actually happened. My suspicion is that they don't want to do this is because they know there's something else they don't want to uncover. But unless they do that, people are going to be left wondering, why are they acting like this?
You want full transparency?
Yes, but that's why I wrote a transparency resolution for the SNP.
But not just that, the full public inquiry into all of it. There should be a full public inquiry into the whole Peter Murrell thing, because the SNP and the Greens are denying having a public inquiry. What have you got to hide? If they think everything's hunky-dory, there's nothing to hide, there should be a full public inquiry. Obviously they've got something to hide. That's why there's no public inquiry. That's why they're hiding behind that. As far as I'm concerned, I agree with this gentleman. John Swinney should resign because he knew a lot of what was going on. There needs to be a new generation of SNP leadership who are not tainted by all these tainted finances, and that means a younger generation coming in and leading the SNP towards what we really want, and that's Scottish independence.
To answer your
own political background, you were in the SNP. What parties have you been in since then?
I joined ALBA, and then I was an independent candidate in the general election in Edinburgh West. J.K. Rowling apparently voted for me. I'm not sure it helped, but I certainly support her and support women's rights, so I'm quite happy to have her support. And I just recently was standing in the last election for what was the Workers' Party. Yes, with Yvonne Ridley. Strangely enough, I didn't get elected.
Quite a varied, John.
Not really. There's one thing throughout all of it. I support women's rights, women's equal rights, and I support Scotland being an independent country. And all those parties had exactly that as one of their policies.
Scotland had won the independence campaign when he stands in here today. Would you even have looked at their accounts if they'd won? Would you be quite happy?
Oh, right, I see. I'm not doing this because we lost, okay? According to a witness, which is Ian Dommett, at the weekend, the Yes campaign was completely undermined by Peter Murrell and others at the top of the SNP, withholding money and stopping them from doing it. And he's, according to him, not my words, that we would have won if they hadn't interfered.
Because very little of the money actually trickled down to the grassroots campaigns. No,
which is a terrible thing to think about.
But what's important here is honesty, principles and decency. That's why so many people out there think politics is corrupt in all the mainstream parties. We need to reintroduce moral compass into politics, and this is what this is about. Nothing to do with anything else.
Can I just say, to come back to your point, so John Swinney made excuses in 2021 for the loan of money from Peter Murrell to the party, claiming it was for a short-term cash flow issue. That was not true. So either he knew it wasn't true, or he was just making excuses covering up for his old schoolboy friend, who we now know was embezzling funds. The SNP should have been able to detect that very easily if they had allowed anyone to see the accounts. And the same thing seems to be happening with Yes Scotland. The accounts are a mess by any stretch of the imagination. And why are we only finding out now 10 years later that they're coming up, well, they have a full set of accounts, they've got a profit and loss account. Well, in which case, why didn't you upload it? Everybody's free to do that. Why did you choose to use abbreviated accounts so that nothing, and then make all these corrections later on, which makes no sense. So I do believe it still leaves unanswered questions. And John Swinney, telling us for several years that there was no missing money, and then reverses that 5 years later and tells us, oh, the money's all been spent. That's not someone I can trust.
Dave, very, very quickly. It was a company limited by guarantee.
Yeah.
As I understand it, the guarantors...
£1.
Those reserves get paid out. Do you know who the guarantors were of Yes Scotland?
It's only two. I think it's Scott Martin as a guarantor, £1. I don't even think Blair Jenkins has from the paperwork, but I don't have it with me because I've handed it all in. But I do remember seeing it, and I only saw Scott Martin's name and address and a guarantee of £1, which isn't going to cover a minus 825,000 if you've got a loss.
If this is some massive shady heist, why did they put this big clue in their accounts for you to find?
Well, it wasn't very big, otherwise somebody else would have found it.
Why did they put it there? Seems counterintuitive to say
this. Well, I can't second guess why they've done what they've done. Because...
Might be mistaken, of course.
It might be. It might all be a misunderstanding. Only Scott Martin's been around long enough. It's fairly simple to keep a simple set of accounts with a single bank account, and to keep it and make it add up. So I don't think it's a mistake. And it wasn't that big to find. It's a tiny little update in 2014's accounts. And unless I'd been reading the detail, which is obviously what I did, I would never have spotted it, which is probably why no one else spotted it until now.
The other thing, just to re-emphasise, the police said today that these accounts, basically there's a lot of unanswered questions, and the bottom line is we believe criminality has been committed. We wait to see what the police make the final decision on.
And for Scotland, we want an independent Scotland where we run and we're honest and we're open and we're transparent, and things like this can't happen.
Did the police give you any indication as to what kind of crime they would be looking into?
No, it's with the financial
economic
crimes
crime
and economic unit.
They're looking at all of it.
It'll take 2 to 4 weeks for them to perhaps make an assessment and come back. That's all we've got to say, I think.
Is that 2 to 4 weeks, and then they'll come back and say whether or not...
Yes.
Full and yeah.
They're going to assess it over the next 2 to 4 weeks and then decide if criminality has been committed. They will then start an investigation.
Yeah. I think that's just about us, folks.
Thank you.